That's an incredible statement, really. But they were far enough along to think they could. And I suppose that's where we're at in stopping the traffic. Ruth.
Steve.
Bex.
Phil.
Back in 2005.
Whilst Ruth and I were leading a team working on another project,
Steve said something around trafficking one evening, over a glass of wine.
we were approaching the anniversary of the abolition of slavery, 200 years since William Wilberforce's bill.
And he said,
Why don't you do that with me?
and I said, all right then. That really was the shortest interview I've ever had. And the most profound, but little did I know you don't do those things because you know where it's headed. You do those things because they're calling you and urging you to want to be involved.
And from that evening, one of our team is a wordsmith poet. And the following day they came down and said, I've got a name. Got a name for what you're going to do. And they wrote a poem. From there, Stop the Traffic was born. We became volunteers, and Bex, the only paid employee, became the administrator.
And what we did in the first, I'd say, 6 months, is we began to bring in organisations, mainly from Ruth and Steve's Christian networks, where trafficking was already becoming, just starting to come onto their radar.
Two have trafficking on their agenda, Salvation Army and Oasis. Oasis was a global charity that worked with some of the world's poorest and most marginalised communities. Steve set it up. Oasis had already started to see this through, and with Salvation Army, well, their ability to see things off the ground was bar none, so they had stories they were doing live.
Banks and businesses are now starting to engage in stopping trafficking too. Though they're not all asking the right questions, some are still looking for that golden bullet. Let me find the baddie and arrest them. They're still stuck in the past.
But actually, together, we can get the stories, turn them into insight, and democratise that to everyone who can make the maximum change. There's something very powerful in that. Look, there's our goal. Because if we don't give the generation behind us any access. Because you have to lead these next 10 years just as much. There was a story with Vionian and Sunni. We articulated Phil as being very much a founding moment because of what he saw in that platform station in Mumbai.
To cut a long story short, after university I received a leaflet offering the opportunity to do some voluntary work overseas. So I found myself working for Oasis Global Charity, and I met my wife, Rachel.